Joe Walsh's life has had spectacular highs and awful lows. Walsh's story is tragic and strong. Early music interest came from his mother's classical background, and he lost his father and daughter, which was heartbreaking. He struggled with addiction and became famous with the Eagles, but few saw his burden. Walsh is finally opening up about his rock star struggles at 76, showing his friends and supporters what they always thought about his private disputes. Keep listening to learn. Joe Walsh began music amid a time of talent and tragedy. In Wichita, Kansas, Joseph Fiddler Walsh was born on November 20th, 1947. Music was more than a passion for him, was born with it. Early on, his classically educated mother taught him to appreciate music. However, his father's abrupt plane accident death devastated Joe and his mother. They relocated frequently until finding safety in Montclair, New Jersey. Montclair was where young Joe began music. He started playing guitar at 10 because he enjoyed the sound and intensity of rock bands like and the Beatles. In school band, he played oboe, but he adored electric guitar, expressing his emotions and creativity. While at Kent State University, Joe began to dream of a singing career. Already playing with Ohio bands improved his talents and confidence. He formed the Measles at Kent State. Soon after, he led hard rock trio the James Gang. They became famous in Northeast Ohio rapidly. They've opened for Fleetwood Mac, The Who, and Led Zeppelin. There was still darkness ahead. Walsh was at Kent State on May 4, 1970, when National Guard forces shot a peaceful student protest, killing 4, injuring many. Joe's life and heart were forever impacted by the tragedy. Joe was used to losing his Gold Star son. When Joe was a baby, his flight teacher father died on the job. He contemplated life in peace after the Kent State tragedy. On the 50th anniversary of that dreadful day, Joe Walsh recalled how astonished and devastated he was to see his buddies die from gunfire. The memory reminded him how tenuous rage-hope balance is. He would always remember that day in his songs and mission. Walsh quit the James Gang and formed Barnstorm with Joe Vitale and Kenny Passarelli after gaining experience and a new perspective. Joe Walsh reached a creative crossroads in 1972 after leaving the James Gang. Instead of joining a famous ensemble or adhering to one concept, he went alone. Walsh formed Barnstorm with college friend Joe Vitale on drums and Kenny Passarelli on bass. It was more than work. The fusion of rock, folk, jazz, and Caribbean flair was daring. That year's self-titled debut highlighted Walsh's versatility as a guitarist and daring songwriter. Walsh's adventurous innovation reached an audience that appreciated the single despite its low chart position. We like Turn to Stone, and Mother says, because of his brilliant lyrics and inventive guitar playing. Music enthusiasts saw Barnstorm as more than a band. That event showcased Walsh's artistic growth and allowed him to experiment with sound. This is when other artists like the Eagles noticed Walsh's talent. They joined his band afterward. In 1973, Barnstorm released The Smoker You Drink, The Player You Get, their second album, its popular song Rocky Mountain Way. With its slide guitar and laid-back vibe made Walsh a prominent solo artist and changed his career. Barnstorm broke up in 1974, but Walsh's career was greatly affected. A few years of creative freedom with Barnstorm provided him the confidence and abilities to evolve as an artist. This was crucial to his development as an artist. It paved the way for Eagles glory and rock immortality. After the Barnstorm broke up a year later, Joe Walsh joined the Eagles, one of the 1970s most influential rock bands, at his peak. His timing was ideal. As original member Bernie Leadon left and the band moved toward a more guitar-driven sound, Walsh was charismatic on stage, played guitar like no one else, and had a delicate musicality that complemented the Eagles' shifting approach. This bond propelled the band and made Walsh renowned worldwide. Walsh was crucial to the Eagles' 1976 record Hotel California, released shortly after he joined. He played some of rock's most famous guitar duets, especially with Don Felder on the title track. Hotel California's eerie guitar solo is still one of the most recognized. Walsh offered life in the fast lane to the Eagles. Its guitar riff was simple but memorable. It became a hit, demonstrating Walsh's guitar and singing skills. It showcased the band's heavier, rockier sound. Unlike their folk rock background, Walsh's forceful guitar playing changed the band's style, making them stadium rock icons and reaching more people. His artistic flair and daring spirit helped the Eagles and strengthened his connection with Glenn Frey and Don Henley. While the Eagles were famous before Walsh joined, they were most lauded after he did. The Eagles' Hotel California was already a global hit when Joe Walsh joined. Behind his achievement was a terrible portion of his life few knew about. Walsh married Stephanie Rhodes in 1971, a few years earlier. They married again in 1972. Unfortunately, calamity struck in 1974 when their family was gone. Unsafe drivers triggered a horrible vehicle crash that severely injured Emma's head. Despite everyone's efforts, she died that night, leaving her parents devastated. Too bad Joe was touring when the accident happened. He rushed home to grieve his unthinkable loss. Walsh and his wife Stephanie's tough time began after the accident. After dealing with their sadness, their relationship began to break down, leading to their divorce. Joe suffered greatly after losing Emma and struggled through the dark times. All his grief was in his music. The song for Emma, a touching tribute to his daughter, was released in 1974. Walsh told Rolling Stone in 2016 how Emma's death impacted him. He said so what attitude caused him to hurt himself because he was angry with God and the world. He used drugs and alcohol to dull his agony and avoid the truth he hated. Joe remembered his daughter despite his struggles. He created a little Emma memorial pond in North Boulder Park. His calm space allowed him to contemplate and connect with her spirit. Joe Walsh tried hard to live the rock and roll life. Late nights, hard parties, and self-harm were normal. Even though he was mad and nearly destroyed himself, he was tremendously successful. Walsh knew something had to change in the end. Despite its excitement, his lifestyle was unsustainable, and he was about to snap. Changes have made the music industry a better environment to work. When Walsh was at his best, everything changed. Drugs and alcohol were simple to procure due to travel stress, which encouraged hedonism. Many vocalists grew raised with drug usage and fell into its destructive circle. The corporate world lost many talented people. People who couldn't quit their addiction died too young. But Joe Walsh did something rare. He chose to address his issue. Sobriety was difficult for him. Nothing will alter at night. Walsh candidly told Billboard in 2018 that drugs and drink were his gods, a crutch that isolated him and brought out his worst. His anger and resentment caused others to avoid him and ruined his job. Walsh initially used alcohol to overcome stage fright, like many actors. It was scary to imagine performing without it. He ultimately cleaned up in 1993, changing his life. Sobering up scared him of losing creativity and acting ability, but he did it nonetheless. Walsh's 2012 song One Day at a Time candidly described his addiction's ups and downs. Walsh told Rolling Stone in 2016 that he had hidden his addiction's effects for years. When it was too much, he ventured down darker roads and almost died in an accident. Rock bottom may have rescued him, providing him the push he needed to correct things before it was too late. Unfortunately, many of his classmates and friends experienced that destiny. When he joined the Eagles in 1975, Joe Walsh provided more than guitar abilities. People knew him for his chaotic, unstable life. His hotel room antics were as famous as his music, so some wondered if he'd fit in with the Eagles' laid-back manner. The band doubted themselves privately. They worried Walsh's raucous gatherings would damage their reputation. He had the band tossed out of certain places for his outrageous antics. Walsh's instrumental skill was undisputed. His guitar riffs, intensity, and songs gave the Eagles a new sound. Walsh told the Daily Mail years later that his crazy conduct wasn't merely a rock star phase. Their purpose was to hide real terror. When around brilliant songwriters and singers like Glenn Frey and Don Henley, Walsh felt like he had something to prove. Fearing for his safety, he acted dangerously and abused drugs. Walsh's life deteriorated when the Eagles split in 1980. He used drugs more without the band and more while he dated Stevie Nicks. Their relationship spiraled into partying and drug use. Nicks eventually revealed that drugs drove their relationship. Walsh addressed his demons in 1994 when the Eagles reunited. His co-workers, especially Timothy B. Schmidt, advised him to seek medical attention due to health concerns. It was more than just playing music again at this party. Walsh was inspired to reclaim his life. He accepted sobriety, his toughest fight ever. He was addicted to alcohol and thought he needed it to survive. Friends and AA ideals helped him restore his life day by day. Today, Walsh is known for his sobriety. His personal transformation is more notable than his Eagles' accomplishment. Working at First Step to Recovery Treatment Center displays his commitment to sobriety. Even celebrities can learn this. Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac's magnificent voice and heart, recounted a love and loss narrative that many can connect to. Famous Eagles guitarist Joe Walsh is essential to this plot. Nicks often calls Walsh her life passion. They fell in love in the 1980s, like a rock and roll fairy tale. A strong friendship brought two top-notch vocalists together. Nicks stated she loved Walsh more than anybody else. It goes beyond music and work. They clicked immediately at a hotel bar. Nick immediately loved Walsh. Their love was intense and filled them. As with many fame-driven stories, darker influences made their connection harder. Long-term drug misuse plagued their relationship. In addition to love, they shared a horrible lifestyle that slowly damaged their relationship. Nicks admits that their drug problems distracted them. Walsh left after a difficult decision. He was absolutely broken after his heart broke. She recovered after a lengthy and hard process and learned from it. Even when the dust settled, Walsh looked back on their time together with tenderness and clarity, especially in the melancholy ode to their love, "Has anyone ever written anything for you?" He considered Nicks his partner, not just a lover. He found their friendship more like siblings. The confusion and misery of their issues united them. They loved each other deeply, but their addiction drove them apart. Rock supergroups have come and gone, frequently becoming popular and then fading. Some, like Cream, became heroes, while others broke up swiftly due to egos and differing views. Another early 1990s band was Joe Walsh's The Best. They didn't break up or become famous. They vanished fast, leaving a brief, weird trace. Walsh assembled a superb vocal quartet in the early 1990s. Walsh was noted for Eagles work. Don't underestimate this gang. He collaborated with John Entwistle, Keith Emerson, Simon Phillips, and Rick Livingston. Everyone expected great things because they claimed to be the best. In September 1990, they performed songs from each member's career on a brief tour of Japan. Eagles' Life in the Fast Lane, Steely Dan's Reelin' in the Years in Emerson Lake, and Palmer's Fanfare for the Common Man were among the hits. People who disliked the tour spoke up quickly. Rolling Stone noted Rick Livingston, the band's only lesser-known member, struggled to match Don Henley, Roger Daltrey, Donald Fagen, and Greg Lake. Though brief, the Best had made their imprint. Technology has revolutionized the music industry, but Joe Walsh took a different path. Walsh went against the grain with Analog Man, his 11th solo album. He didn't appreciate modern music's polished computerized sound. He wants to return to analog recording to get back to the raw, unfiltered past. Walsh was sending a message with his record. People talk about Walsh's rock and roll life. He lived the rock star dream in the 1970s and 1980s. A fast-paced lifestyle that reflected decade excesses, he represented rock's rebelliousness, but his erratic personality disguised a great voice. He wrote some of rock's most iconic guitar riffs and songs with the Eagles and James Gang. This placed him beside Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix. Walsh was prosperous, but his emotions were unstable because drug usage threatened his employment and health. Later 1980s, Walsh was at a tipping point. Rock and roll excess, once joyful, was now a nightmare. Going to rock bottom woke me up big. Walsh realized he had to alter drastically to survive and succeed. He pursued sobriety with determination. The route was lengthy and hard. It gave me a fresh start. Stopping drinking gave Walsh focus and peace of mind for the first time in years. His life and music transformed with this transition. After getting sober, I wrote more personal songs. He utilized music as therapy to process his emotions and share his tale honestly. This expedition produced Analog Man. It returned to analog sound and the actual thing. The album, made with famous musicians like Jeff Lynne and Ringo Starr, showed Walsh really loved music again. Lynne produced many of the songs cleanly, while Walsh kept the music rough. He opposed modern music's overuse of technology and sought a more organic sound. Analog Man's ideas resonate. The lyrics emphasize gratitude, personal growth, and reflection. They reveal Walsh's thoughts as he accepted his history and present. The title track, which mocks digital life, showcases Walsh's wit and insight. However, the album's softer moments reveal his vulnerability. Soberness opened a new chapter in his life. His honest, self-aware songs resonated with fans. Walsh openly said becoming sober saved his life and helped him enjoy music again. He admits to trying to follow trends for a while, but he realized that being himself was more essential. Walsh's Analog Man album honors that insight. It loved the past but also learned from the present.